Prepping can mean different things to different people, but basically what it boils down to is preparedness, survivalism, and being able to position yourself so that you can weather adverse events. In this video, we're going to talk a little bit about financial prepping, but I'm also going to show you a few ways that you can get your finances in order so that if something bad were to happen, you can more likely come out of it unscathed. It seems that the world is getting more unpredictable by the day. We've got health orders, wars, we've got natural disasters. All of these things are happening. And all of these things have impacts on the financial markets and the broader financial system that all of us transact in on a day-to-day basis. To some, the idea of prepping can seem a little bit silly. And the thing with prepping is that for the most part, it is silly. Until it's not. In Tasmania, recently some workers cut a cable that shouldn't have been cut, some kind of fiber optic or telecommunication cable. The result was FPOS went down. So retailers couldn't do FPOS, people were having trouble paying for their goods. What they had to do is pull out those old machines where they put the credit card on and they run the thing over it and it makes a carbon copy. They were doing that, they were also having to transact in cash because they had no other way to operate. Then you had the floods in Queensland and New South Wales. The water damage and power outages meant that online banking went down, the internet went down, phone signals went down, there was no FPOS, people were having to operate on a cash economy basis for days, much like we had to do in Tasmania. But the trouble was there was also reports that ATMs were not working. So this means you're now in a position where you don't have access to cash or online banking or any means to pay for the food that you need to survive, so you're relying on charity. In the Ukraine, you've got citizens looking to flee the country, lining up at banks to get their cash out for the trip ahead. But the trouble is, a lot of other people had the same idea and the banks were running out of cash. So all of a sudden, you can't get your hands on your own money. And then what if you're in Russia? And even though if you don't support the war and you don't support Putin, because of your citizenry, because of the country you're born in, you've got nothing to do with the war whatsoever, but the West has still frozen your assets that you might have or some bank account in America or something like that. That's a problem for you as well. There might be something happen on the financial markets that sparks a run on the banks. Maybe a particular bank will run into liquidity problems or credit problems and everyone might rush to get their money out. Well, the problem with that is if everyone goes to get their money out at the same time, the banks don't have your money because they lend it out to other people. That's their business. That's how they make money. So if everyone makes a run on the bank at the same time, the money's not there, it basically will cause a collapse of the banking system. What about if the banks do have your money, so there hasn't been a run on the banks, but what about if you just want to get out of town quick? You don't want to be hanging around a bank with lots of people. People are scared, people are desperate, something's happened to cause all this, and this is when things can get dangerous. In this kind of situation, you just want to get out of town fast, you don't want to be wasting time, you just want to be gone away from the crowds where you can look after yourself and your family. Now, what if there's a cyber attack? And this has become very common, it's a common part of modern warfare. A banking system could be attacked, a personal bank account could be attacked, funds could be stolen. These kinds of things are going to make it very hard for you to access your cash if it were to happen. And then what if you were in a bad relationship and your partner happened to turn violent towards you and you just want to get out? But then say they might have taken your name off the bank accounts or taken all the money out of the bank accounts so you don't have access to funds. Now this has become a very threatening situation for you. So there are many different situations that can happen. There'll be many more things that I haven't mentioned here and things I haven't even thought of. Stuff happens every day that we don't expect. But the good news is there are little things, easy things that you can do to set yourself up to be able to survive such a bad event were it to happen to you, so you can get out of Dodge while the going is good and get on with your life. This video isn't to say that you should be worried about things. I'm not trying to put fear into you. If you have total faith in the system that we all operate in, that's fine. All I'm doing here is giving you some options for if you think a little differently about things. Because if you are a bit more conservative when it comes to risk, if you just want to have a defensive element to your portfolio, a bit of a hedge if you will, then these things that I'm about to go through will help you to weather these kinds of adverse events. At the very least, having your financial prep down can help you sleep better at night, because the reality is the world isn't always a happy and safe place. It can be brutal at times. That is the reality. And there is no shortage of uncertainty in the world. We all know that. And there are no guarantees to getting out of a situation unscathed. So it's up to you to set things in place to ensure you and your family have the best chance of not being wiped out in a major event. And I want to emphasize that it's up to you, your responsibility, and yours only. Not the government, not the local council, not insurance companies, and not your neighbors. Sure, there might be some help that comes, and that help might be welcome, but that help might not come as well, or it might not come soon enough. The point here is that there are no guarantees, so you need to work on controlling what you can control and not what you can't. Because the system we rely on, like anything in life, has its breaking point. And on a long enough timeline, everything will break at some point. All right, so let's move on now to what you can do to get your financial prepping in order. And the first thing we're going to look at is having liquid cash at the bank. So you need to have an at-call savings account. This is a bank account that you have access to that you can pull money out at any time. It's not stocks on the stock market that's going to take 2 or 3 days to get access to once you sell it. It's not money in a term deposit. It's not maybe something in some other account that has a delay getting your money out when you transfer it back out to your personal account. You need to be able to get this money when you need it with no delay. You need to have an emergency fund. Things come up every day. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, if something big comes up, some major event, or even just your car breaks down, if you don't have a couple of grand sitting in a bank account that you can pull on and get things sorted and move on, then you're going to be in trouble. This is very important. Living paycheck to paycheck is a desperate way to live, and it's, you know, not everyone has their choice to that, but if you can get out of that, then you definitely want to move forward and have an emergency fund. You can look at self-insuring. So if, for instance, if you're in a flood zone in New South Wales and you have a house that's now uninsurable, or wasn't insurable before, or it was just too expensive to insure, why not self-insure? Instead of paying the insurance company $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, $10,000, whatever every year, pay yourself that money. Take that money out, put it in another account, invest it in some account that's earning interest, or in, you know, maybe in the stock market if you don't need it quickly, but you want to have it grow over a period of time. But the point is here is, even if you can't get insurance for something, doesn't mean that you can't self-insure and put that money aside so you've got it there when you need it. You can look at having more than one bank account. What if your one bank account happened to get hacked? What if you happen to lose the PIN number, happen to lose the card, you've only got the one bank account, then you're in trouble. If you've got multiple bank accounts, if one account can't be accessed for some reason, you can then move to your other account and get access to that, hopefully. And you want to have more than one bank card. Maybe having only one ATM card or credit card, some kind of card that you can use to get cash out if that account goes down, or you lose your card, if it's damaged, or if it's stolen, if it's hacked. You want to have access to another bank account card that you can then take out, go to the ATM and get some cash from. You can take this a step further by having different bank accounts with different banks. There might be a cyber attack on one particular bank. There might be some kind of technical issue with one particular bank, but maybe other banks in your area are unaffected at all and they're still operating as normal. In that case, if one bank goes down, then you can then go to your other bank and still be able to operate. Now let's look at physical cash. It's really not a bad idea to have access to a couple of grand cash when you need it in an emergency. And here we're talking about the plastic stuff if you're in Australia. I'm not talking about money in a bank account that you need a card to access, or a phone to get access to, or internet to get access to. You need access to cold hard cash. This could be if there's a cyber attack and electronic systems go down, online banking goes down, internet goes down, phone signal goes down, power outages, so there's no FPOS, no ATMs. You really need to be able to get your hands on the cold hard cash. This is something that has lasted a long time. It's been around longer than electronics and the internet have been around, and it is tried and true and will get you out of trouble, no worries. Also, like I said above, if everyone went to the bank right now at this very point in time or around the same time and tried to get their money out, they wouldn't have your money and the system would likely collapse. Well, if there were a run on the banks, that's another reason why you want to have some cash lying around. A couple of grand lying around for an emergency is really not a bad idea at all. So you can pick up your money, you can head out the door, you don't have to worry about going to the bank, you can go to the shop straight away when no one else can get their money out or the internet's down. You are able to transact, and that is the important thing. Now, what if you want to be able to transact privately? This is an issue that is becoming more relevant these days days as central banks and governments start to turn towards what they call central bank digital currencies, which is a bit like a cryptocurrency, but it's centralized and controlled by a central bank. With this comes more financial surveillance and control over how and when you can spend your money potentially. So if you really want to be able to transact privately, if you want to be able to enter into some kind of transaction, but you don't necessarily want Big Brother standing over your shoulder watching everything that you do with your money, if you value your privacy, then cash is perfect for that. And I'm not talking anything dodgy or illegal. I'm not talking anything like that. All I'm saying is it not a fundamental right of ours to be able to transact with whoever we want to transact with and not be judged by it? Provided it's not illegal, of course. So as I've outlined above, going through all these things, as you can see, the cashless economy, which we are being steered towards, and some people may even say there is a war on cash, well, it comes with big risks and it is very vulnerable to cyber attack, to power outage, to phone signal going down, to internet going down, to natural disasters. It is very vulnerable to all these things. And this is where physical cash reigns supreme. All right, so let's talk a little bit about crypto. Now, crypto is great because it is outside the realm of central governments, for now at least. That probably is going to change, but I'm sure there will be other kinds of technology that comes up to counter that as well. I made a video about some of the regulatory changes that are coming in Australia, so I'll put a link up above if you're interested in that, but it's going to happen all around the world. But for the time being, it is good that you can transact in a currency that isn't controlled by someone else. This is your money, you have custody of it, you can do what you want with it. It can't be inflated away like a fiat currency can be. All of this inflation, a lot of this inflation, the higher prices at the fuel bowser, more expensive food, healthcare, a lot of this has to do with quantitative easing and the expansion of the Federal Reserve and other central banks' balance sheets over the last, well, since 2008 really, but since last 2 years is when it's really gone nuts. Now, you don't have that with most cryptocurrencies because they have a fixed money supply, similar to gold, or it increases at a very small amount. Not like a fiat currency where it can just be pumped and pumped and pumped to a point where your money is worth a lot less than it was sort of 10 years ago. Another good thing about crypto and a form of currency that isn't controlled by a central authority is that it is harder to be switched off or frozen. Because the government doesn't control it, it is a lot harder for them to get to it. Now, I'm not saying that this won't happen in the future, but if you were going to compare that to a central bank digital currency where they could basically switch off your money with a click of a button, there's a big difference in that. And also, if you're concerned about being able to transact privately, there are certain coins out there that do allow you to do this. Bitcoin is, not as anonymous as people might think, but something like Monero, for instance, is a lot more private when it comes to being able to transact without people looking at what you're doing with your money. And of course, again here guys, not talking anything dodgy, not talking anything illegal. This is all legal, but not all of us, not everyone doesn't want Big Brother standing over their shoulder at all times. All right, so let's talk about bullion. So basically I'm talking about gold and silver here. I'm not talking about EFTs or even bullion-backed EFTs. I'm talking about the hard stuff that you can hold in your hand, because that's the only stuff that you can really control and use if you need to use it. Now, gold is a safe haven. Whenever there's turmoil on the financial markets or turmoil in the world, when money gets scared, money flows out of the stock market, it tends to flow into gold because gold is safe. It's perceived as being safe. It's the oldest store of value known to mankind. It has stood the test of time. It has been around a lot more longer than the US dollar or the euro or the pound or anything like that. It's been around basically for as long as humans were able to transact with each other. It is real money in that it will hold its value. It can't be inflated away. It's a hedge against inflation. It's not something that can be manipulated by a central government or harder to. So if you have physical bullion, gold and silver, this is something that you can use to sort of prop up your portfolio in a time when everything else is getting hammered. Another good thing about bullion is that it's one step removed from the financial system. And what I mean by that is it's not something that is that can be like switched off or frozen, or you can't lose it from credit risk. I guess there is a risk of losing it from theft, but that can be managed. So it's something that if everything else goes down, if the whole financial system went into meltdown, you could, provided you were able to get to your bullion, then you could have that there and you know you're going to be safe financially because that's going to be worth something. And of course, it allows you to transact privately because it's a physical good. You can give it to someone in exchange for a motor vehicle or whatever it might be. And it's not something that's being tracked by a bank. It's not being tracked by the government, depending on how much you're moving around and whatever you're doing. So you have that ability to transact privately, which maybe you value that as well. Now, a lot of the things I've been talking about here are related to political risk. So let's talk a little bit about that. Or I guess kind of what I mean is country-specific risk. Now let's look at something that happened recently. You had the trucker protests in early 2022 in Canada. Now, regardless of whether you support this or not, what you have to be concerned about here is that the Canadian government more or less came out and said that if you are involved in this stuff, the protests that they deem to be illegal, or if you were seen to be funding these, what they said were illegal activities, then you can have your assets frozen. You can have your bank accounts frozen without court order, basically have your money turned off. The banks can, if they suspected you of being involved, potentially they could have shut the money off. And I'm not talking here about if you're for or against, but what I'm talking about here is whether you agreed with them or not, what if the tables were turned? What if there was a protest next year for something that you strongly believed in, and then these laws were used against you and people that were supporting you? That's why this was such a dangerous precedent, that it can be that anyone who deeply supported a particular issue could have their money switched off. And that would make your life very difficult indeed. And then of course you could be in Russia. You might have nothing to do with the war at all. You might not support the war at all, but you're getting caught up in all of these economic sanctions that are taking place. Now, if anything, these things kind of happen, you need to have a plan to get out. So you need to have assets outside of the country. You need to have assets that can't be controlled by government or a central authority. And you need to have a way to get out of the country if you need to get out. So you need to have your passports. If you have, the means to do it, you might have a second residency somewhere, but you need to be able to get out if you have to, and you need to be able to transact if you have to, because if you can't transact, you can't live. The bottom line here, guys, is you need to make sure that you are able to transact in any situation, because the ability to transact underpins everything in life. Without being able to transact, to pay for things, to trade for things, you might have a difficult time trying to find shelter, to pay for food and water, and to ensure your safety. Any number of things can happen in life. If we've learned anything from the last couple of years, we know that things are very uncertain, things are very fluid, and unforeseen events, black swan events do happen, and stuff that seemed a little while ago that it seemed very unlikely, these days is seeing in some ways more likely that things could happen that could have a major impact on our lives. So if something happens and you're not prepared for it, you can indeed get wiped out. That is a very real risk. But if you are prepping for something, if you have got your finances in order, you've got a plan B, you're maintaining your ability to transact and provide for yourself and your family, then this goes a long way to making sure you come out of something unscathed. Even if you do get knocked down, at least you're going to have a better ability to be able to get up, dust yourself off, and get on with living your life. So if you've never thought about this stuff before and someone sort of mentioned it to you, yeah, it might sound a bit crazy, but really, the bottom line is it's not that crazy when you really think about it and things that can happen. All that has to happen is events have to take a bit of a nasty turn, and then all of a sudden you're in trouble. At a minimum, even if you don't need to utilize your prepping strategies or call upon your strategies right now or at any point in the future, it will give you a sense of control. And when you're living in an uncertain world, having that sense of control can do wonders for your mental well-being. It's just something in us that helps us feel better about things when we know we have a bit of a security blanket there. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching, guys. That is it for the video. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. A lot of people have a lot of different kind of ideas about prepping and financial prepping. All I wanted to do here is I want to show to you that a lot of it does have a legitimate sort of thinking behind it, and it's really not so crazy to maybe do a little bit, even if it's just having a bit more money in the bank account, having a bit of cash on hand, having more than one bank account, just basic things. You can take it as far as you want to take it, or you don't have to take it anywhere at all. That's your assessment, and you will make your judgment on that. But anyway, guys, let me know what you think below, and hopefully we'll see you on the next one.